Do you ever stop to really think about what money actually is?
It's funny, isn't it?
We use it every single day, buying coffee, paying bills, saving, but we rarely pause to, understand it beyond just spending it.
Exactly.
Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this really fundamental concept. We've got this fantastic article, What is Money? From Money Mentor, and it breaks it down really clearly. Good for anyone, really.
Yeah, it's quite accessible.
So our mission today is to take you on a bit of a journey. We'll look at its history, its core purpose, how it actually works, and, well, why it's just so critical in our modern world.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's unpack this.
What's truly fascinating here, I think, and often overlooked, is just how profoundly money shapes everything. It's not just coins and notes or, numbers on a screen. It's really a foundation stone of our society. It underpins basically everything.
From global trade right down to your morning coffee, like you said.
Right. And as we dig in, you'll see it has this story that's, well, way more intriguing than you might think. It's evolved dramatically. From ancient bartering all the way to the complex digital systems we use today is quite a journey.
That's a great way to put it. We all interact with it, but yeah, rarely see that bigger picture. So let's start right at the beginning then. If you had to boil it down for someone, what exactly is money at its absolute core?
Well, at its most basic, money is simply a universal tool, something that we as humans agree to use for exchanging things.
Right.
The Money Mentor article calls it a means serving as a universal equivalent and also a universal instrument of exchange.
Universal equivalent. Okay.
Think of it like this. You have apples, I have oranges. Instead of the haggling over how many apples an orange is worth,
Yeah.
which can get complicated fast,
Yeah, I can imagine.
we both just agree to use money. It's like a common measuring stick. It makes all that trade possible, really. It's the basis for how we interact economically.
So it's not just a physical thing then. It's more like a concept, a collective agreement that gives it power.
Exactly. That's the crucial bit. Money only works because people participate.
Right.
We're the ones who decide prices, use it to sell stuff, make payments, save it up. So technically, almost any object could function as money.
Really? Anything?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
As long as enough people agree collectively to use it in those ways.
That's quite a thought, that its value comes from our shared belief in it. Makes you wonder how we got from those really basic exchanges to the complex systems we have now. What did the earliest forms of money even look like?
Well, you got to imagine a time before money as we know it, right?
Okay.
So if you had, say, too much grain and you needed a new tool, you'd have to find someone who not only had a tool but also wanted your grain.
That sounds difficult, time-consuming.
Totally. That's bartering.
Yeah.
So the simplest form of money back then was just products, exchanged directly for other goods. We call that commodity money. The grain itself, or maybe a goat, was the payment.
So the goat was the currency. Wow, that must have been incredibly awkward if you needed to buy something big.
It absolutely was. Think about it. In early societies, things like animal skins, grain, even livestock, they all served as money at different times and places. But as trade got more sophisticated, people needed something, more convenient, more practical.
Yeah, less bleeding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this naturally led to a shift towards noble metals, things like gold and silver.
Why them specifically?
Well, they had good qualities for money. They were durable. You could divide them into smaller bits. They didn't rot or perish. And they were rare enough to hold value. Just much better suited for what money needed to do.
And infinitely easier to carry around than a whole herd of cattle if you were making a big purchase.
No kidding.
But even gold didn't last forever as the main form. How did we end up with the paper money and, well, the digital stuff we use now?
You're right. As economies got more complex, especially with banks and credit starting to develop, metal money started being replaced by what we call credit money.
Okay, credit money.
This is where paper money first came in. Initially, it was like a promise, often backed by gold held somewhere, like an IOU from the bank or the government.
Ah, I see.
Then eventually it just became backed by government decree, what we call fiat money. And now, of course, most money isn't even physical, is it? It's just entries in bank accounts, digital.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting, I think, because we hear all these terms floating around today. Fiat money, credit money, secured, full value, half value.
Yeah, there are a few.
It sounds like these aren't fundamentally different things, maybe, but more like different stages or forms of currency that evolved, each suited to its time.
That's a great way to think about it, precisely. Each term really describes how that money gets its value and how it's used.
Yeah.
They all serve the same basic purpose, but yeah, their structure tells us a lot about the economic era they belong to. It's definitely a story of constant adaptation.
So, speaking of purpose, to really get our heads around money, we need to understand what it actually does for us, right? It's not just sitting there. It has these active roles.
Mm-hmm.
What are the main functions that modern economics points to?
Yeah, absolutely. Modern economics usually highlights several key functions. The first one is its role as a measure of value, sometimes called a unit of account.
Measure of value.
Imagine trying to compare, I don't know, a car and a washing machine without money. How would you even start?
Yeah, tricky.
Money gives us that universal yardstick, that common measure.
So it's like a universal language for value, then.
Exactly. The article has a great analogy. It says, the price of a commodity has the same measuring function as a length in geometry and mass in physics.
Oh, interesting.
You don't need to be a physics whiz to know what 5 kilograms means, right? Money does the same for economic value. It provides a standard unit, dollars, euros, whatever, to express the value of any good or service. We could say something is worth $50,000 instead of, 1,000 goats and 200 bushels of wheat.
Much simpler.
Much. Now, people do debate how stable this measure is, especially with inflation messing things up.
Right.
But its function as that standard way to compare value is undeniable.
Okay, that makes sense. Which leads us right into what most people probably think of first. Money as a medium of exchange. How does it simplify things compared to, say, that goat for grain barter?
Oh, it's revolutionary, really. Money acts as an intermediary, a go-between.
Okay.
Without it, you need that double coincidence of wants we talked about. I have apples, you have tools, and I happen to want your tools, and you happen to want my apples right now.
Which must have been rare.
Very. Money completely breaks that chain. Its key feature here is its liquidity.
Liquidity.
And how easily and quickly you can use it.
Yeah.
Cash is very liquid. A house, not so much. This function is all about overcoming the practical limits of time and space in trade.
What do you mean by limitations of time and space? Sounds a bit sci-fi.
Not quite. It just means, with money, a farmer can sell their grain today, get paid, and then use that money to buy, say, new equipment next month, even if the person who bought the grain isn't the one selling the equipment. They don't have to find someone who wants grain right now and also has the specific tools they need right now. Or they could sell their produce in their hometown
Okay.
and use that money to buy something totally different while they're on vacation somewhere else entirely. Money frees us from those immediate constraints of direct swapping. It makes commerce incredibly flexible, efficient.
Got it. Okay, so it's a common measure. It's how we swap things. And then there's its role as a means of payment. How is that different from just being a medium of exchange? They sound similar.
That's a good question. There's definitely overlap, but the means of payment function really zooms in on money's role in settling debts and obligations.
Debts. Okay. Like bills.
Exactly. Think about paying your credit card bill or your rent or your taxes. You're not necessarily swapping money for a good right at that exact moment. You're fulfilling a prior agreement or obligation.
Right. Paying off something you already owe.
Precisely. Money becomes the agreed-upon tool for settling those debts, even if the value of the goods or services the debt was for might have changed in the meantime, maybe due to price fluctuations. It's the universal way we clear our accounts with landlords, shops, the government, anyone really.
Okay, that distinction makes sense. And finally, the function we all aspire to use more effectively, money as a means of accumulation, saving, building wealth. How does money let us do that?
Right, this is where money acts as a store of value, holding its worth over time.
Store of value.
When you accumulate money, you save it. Basically, without immediately spending it, you're essentially transferring purchasing power from today into the future. It's money that's temporarily pulled out of the active flow, out of circulation. And unlike, say, a pile of bananas, money itself doesn't disappear when it's consumed or used. It allows you to postpone your ability to buy things, gives you freedom for future purchases or investments.
So it's about holding on to that potential to buy things later. But there's a big catch here, isn't there? Something that can eat away at that stored value.
Absolutely. And it's a huge one for anyone thinking about saving long-term inflation.
Ah, yes. The silent thief.
Pretty much. While money lets you accumulate purchasing power, The actual amount that money can buy in the future depends heavily on inflation rates. If inflation is high, the $100 you save today might buy significantly less a year from now or 10 years from now.
Yeah, it's like a hidden tax on your savings. Really crucial to remember.
Definitely. It directly impacts our financial decisions every day.
Okay, that covers the core functions really well. Now, let's broaden the view a bit. Beyond just us or even our own country, how does money work on a global scale? International trade and all that.
All right, this brings us to the concept of world money. As countries started trading more, lending to each other, providing services across borders, they obviously needed a way to pay each other that everyone would accept.
Makes sense.
So world money serves as that global medium,
Yeah.
a universal means of payment for international deals. It's almost like a globally recognized form of social wealth materialized.
So like a special currency everyone trusts for the really big international stuff.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Historically, precious metals, especially gold, played that role for centuries, right up until the 20th century, really.
Okay.
But today, we mainly use what are called reserve currencies.
Reserve currencies, I've heard that term.
These are national currencies that are widely held by central banks around the world and heavily used for international trade and finance. Think of the US dollar primarily,
Right.
but also the euro, the British pound, the Japanese yen, the Swiss franc. These are the big ones, the go-to currencies for global commerce.
Yeah. And I've heard that even though the US dollar is, well, very dominant, other currencies can sometimes be used directly for international payments too.
That's correct. There are systems like the CLS Continuous Linked Settlement Payment System. It allows for the pretty seamless conversion and settlement of, it's 18 different currencies now.
Wow, 18.
Yeah, so a company in Japan can pay a company in, say, Germany directly using yen, and the system handles the conversion smoothly and safely. It really shows how interconnected the global financial plumbing has become.
Definitely. Okay, before we dive into the different types of money we see today, I wanted to ask about this quirky historical thing from the article. Means of forming treasure. What on earth was that about?
Treasure. Yeah, that's a fascinating little historical footnote.
Sounds like pirates.
Well, maybe not quite. But back when money was mainly physical precious metals like gold coins, if there seemed to be too much gold floating around compared to the actual goods available to buy, people would sometimes just hoard it. They'd literally turn it into treasure, maybe bury it or just lock it away somewhere.
Why?
The thinking, maybe not always consciously, was that by taking that money out of circulation, it would help keep things in balance. Balance the amount of money with the amount of stuff to buy. Prevent prices from going wild, perhaps.
Huh. So it was like a really primitive, sort of natural way of controlling the money supply, almost.
In a very, very loose sense, maybe. But it's really important to distinguish this from modern savings.
How so?
Well, savings, as we think of them today, are usually money set aside for a specific future purpose, like a down payment, retirement, a big purchase.
Right.
Treasure, in this historical sense, was more like money piled up without a specific goal, often just because people couldn't, or maybe didn't want to, spend it effectively at that moment. It was just idle cash, basically. Today, with our symbolic money paper and digital and sophisticated central banks managing the money supply, this treasure function is completely insignificant. It's really just a relic from a totally different economic time.
That is such an interesting historical detour. Okay, so we've seen money evolve. We've seen what it does. What does this all mean for how we actually categorize the money we use or have used? What are the main types we should know about?
Right. Building on that history, the first type is commodity money. We touched on this. This is money where the object itself has actual inherent value. It has other uses besides being money.
Like your gold coin example, you can melt it down and make jewelry. It has value as metal, not just because it's stamped as a coin.
Exactly. And historical examples are things like cattle, grain, furs, pearls, those cowrie shells you sometimes see.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, full-weight metal coins. Copper, bronze, silver, gold. The value of the money is basically the value of the stuff it was made from.
Okay, makes sense. Then we have fiat money,
Yeah.
which you said is most of what we use now.
That's right. Fiat money has basically no independent value, or its value as a material is tiny compared to its face value. A $100 bill, it's just a piece of fancy paper, really.
So why does it work?
It works only because the government declares it legal tender, meaning you legally have to accept it for debts, and, crucially, the government accepts it for paying taxes. It's money simply by government decree or fiat.
Okay. It's based on trust in the government, essentially.
Largely, yes. Trust and legal requirement.
And its main forms today are?
Well, you've got your banknotes, physical cash, and what the article calls non-cash money, which is a slightly confusing term.
Yeah.
It doesn't literally mean not cash. It refers to settling payments without using physical currency. So when you use your debit card or make a bank transfer or use Apple Pay or something, that's non-cash money. It's just digital representations in accounts.
Oh, okay. Digital money, basically.
Exactly. And the article makes the point that with payment cards and e-money becoming so common, actual physical banknotes are gradually being used less and less for many transactions.
Yeah, you definitely see that. Okay, and the last type mentioned is credit money. This sounds like loans, credit cards, stuff we deal with all the time.
It is. Credit money essentially represents a future claim. It's basically a promise to pay later. Often it takes the form of a transferable security like a bond, but even simpler forms exist. You use it to buy goods or services now, or to pay off existing debts, with the understanding that the actual settlement, the actual money transfer, will happen later.
Right.
And this is the key difference. It carries the risk of default because it's a promise to pay, not an immediate transfer of existing value like handing over cash. And, well, sometimes promises get broken.
That makes sense. There's always that risk element with credit.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? We've traced money from like shells and animal skins all the way to digital bits zipping around the globe in these complex credit systems. Why is understanding all this actually important, not just for economists, but for, us in our daily lives and for the big picture economy?
It's incredibly important, foundational, really. The Money Mentor article puts it very simply. Money is an important component in making the world go round.
Can't argue with that.
Modern economies, as we know them, simply could not function without the exchange of money for goods and services.
Wow.
It's stated right there. It's the foundation of economies.
Wow.
The foundation.
Without it, we'd be back to that incredibly inefficient bartering system. It would severely limit our ability to specialize in jobs, to innovate, even just to cooperate on a large scale.
So it's way more than just a convenience. It's like the engine, the lubricant that lets the whole economic machine run smoothly and grow.
That's a great analogy. Precisely. Money, whatever form it takes, shells, gold, digital code, provides that essential, universally accepted means of exchange and store of value. The article concludes it permits the economy to flourish by allowing transactions to be performed at faster rates.
Faster rates, more specialization, more trade. Exactly. Understanding this stuff isn't just some academic exercise. It's really about understanding the core mechanism that facilitates our jobs, our businesses, our ability to save and plan, and even, our collective progress as a society. It touches everything.
What an incredible deep dive. It really makes you appreciate something so familiar in a whole new way. We started with money just being this universal equivalent, this shared idea, then journeyed through its amazing evolution from actual stuff like grain and skins to precious metals, then paper promises, and now mostly digital signals.
It's quite the story.
And we unpacked its core jobs. Measuring value, making exchange easy, settling payments, and letting us save for the future, even with that inflation caveat. So hopefully you listening now have a much clearer sort of foundational understanding of what money really is, how it works, and why it's just so utterly vital.
And, thinking about its constant evolution, how it keeps adapting to society's needs, it really prompts a compelling question for the future, doesn't it?
Well.
Like what is the next major transformation going to be?
Yeah.
How will we define and use money next? Will it be purely digital central bank currencies? Or maybe something totally different, something based on technology we haven't even fully grasped yet?
Interesting point.
And what could that mean for our economies, for our social connections in the coming decades? It's definitely something fascinating to think about.
It really is. A great thought to leave us with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep exploring and stay curious.